Arizona Cardinals. We have 4 more teams. We're 7/8 of the way through the NFL, theoretically. South comes on Wednesday. All right, Arizona Cardinals. What are we doing in Arizona? Picking at 4 overall here.
Yeah. Wow, we got a lot of picks.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 draft picks.
So when we're talking about the Broncos and the Raiders, and we say let's reset, like let's look to next year, Arizona is kind of the template for this thing.
Yeah, 6 of which are in the first 90 picks.
They have 6 in the first 90. Yeah, you're right. 420. Yeah. 3 out of the first 35. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of opportunity.
A lot of drafts capital we got working here.
Arizona was uniquely positioned last year to really punt on their season because they knew they were missing Kyler Murray. If they didn't have that, they probably wouldn't have gone this extreme. But now that it's like, all right, we're in a good spot.
And they have an incredible amount of draft capital, even when you consider they kind of got hosed by the fact that the Texans were wildly better than everybody thought they would be.
Oh, that Texans pick easily could have been top 10, 15.
These picks at the start of the season were sort of betting favored to be 1 and 2 overall. And instead they end up with 4 and 27, which is still really good, but could have been so much better.
And then they have Marquise Brown as their biggest name free agent.
And a ton of cap space.
So I feel like, a ton of cap space. So I feel like this is, first off, when you have this much draft capital, are they in the trade down market at 4, like they were last year? So they had pick 3, they traded down to 12 with Houston, and then back up to 6. Right. And part of the reason why it was so great for Arizona is like they were going to pick Paris Johnson, their first round tackle, at 3. And then they got all these extra draft picks and still got him at 6, which was awesome. Are they still in the market to do that again? Or do you just take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, or whoever you like the best at 4, let's say Marvin Harrison, and then maybe the next 4 or 5 picks are all on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends how those first 3 picks go. Number one, if quarterback goes 1, 2, 3, the question will be, do you trade? Can you get a trade down? And if you can, do you value that more than picking Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 4?
Reminds me of 2021, where there were 3 quarterbacks at the top, and then when Kyle pitched, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell, Micah Parsons was in that draft, Patrick Surtain, right? And we said, if you're going to trade down, don't trade down so far that you don't get a blue chip. Right. Is that the question Arizona's asking right here? How far can you trade down and still get? Like if they have a similar grade on Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors and somebody wants to come up and get one of those guys, you trade down to 6 or 7 and still get can you still get one of those guys and feel good about it?
And then alternatively, Marvin Harrison Jr. gets picked at 3 and all of a sudden QB3 is available where you're picking. That probably makes it a lot easier to trade down. And
True.
The guy that you probably would have coveted the most in Harrison Jr. is already gone. So that makes that decision a lot easier if that's the way it works out.
So I'm having deals on the table with Atlanta, Minnesota, Denver, or the Raiders if they're interested in getting to 4 if things fall a certain way.
Right. If QB3 is still on the board at pick number 4 and those guys are interested in that player, the Cardinals should absolutely be looking to try and make that deal happen. Particularly if it's, the higher up that pick is, the better. Like if Atlanta is willing to make that deal and you're only dropping to 8, no brainer.
So I really want to come away with one of those 2 receivers. Marquise Brown's a free agent, probably not bringing him back. Michael Wilson emerged as a nice little 2 last year, 2 potential. Give me that wide receiver 1. I want Neighbors or Marvin Harrison.
And I put Adunze into that category as well. Like I don't see any reason he can't be in that group.
So we have to come away with one of the top receivers. If I could still flip it for more picks, great. And then let's say we're picking at 27, 35, 66, 71, and 90. Defensive side of the ball needs a lot of help. So that's probably the route to go there, late first. I think the cornerback market, similar to some other teams. I don't know if some of the top, like 4 or 5 of the top corners might be gone there by 27. That's a little risky. So where they're positioned, they might miss out on some of the top corners. I'm a little concerned about that. But defensive line depth, they need it all.
They've also got 6 day 3 picks in a year where we keep saying you don't want day 3 picks. I wonder how much flexibility that gives them to move around with some of these day 1 and 2 picks. Can they package some of those picks that they probably don't want anyway and move around, in the first couple of rounds and maybe get 5 spots higher than they were starting with?
I see Chop Robinson as high as 20, up at 29 right now on the most recent consensus board that I looked at. If I could get a receiver high, maybe a corner with my second first, and then like a Chop Robinson at 35 if he's still there.
Chop Robinson's your guy. You mentioned him for like every.
I'm looking at edge. He's
rushers.
the edge that's like round 1, 2.
Yeah. So he's the guy.
He's the guy this year. He's the guy. There's always a guy that gets drafted by every team. Who else could I make up? Byron Murphy. I don't know if Murphy really goes as high as people are saying.
Okay.
He could be there, late first and into the second.
Braylon Trice.
Oh yeah, there's my second tier of edge. I really want to give everybody Austin Booker.
Yeah.
From Kansas. He's up to 104 on the consensus board.
75 in PFF's board.
Yeah, he might be in the 60s or 70s at the end of the day. He'll be higher. I want Austin Booker from Kansas for everybody. Also want the Murphy brothers for everybody.
The Murphy brothers.
From UCLA. Gabriel and Grayson. Where else are we going with Arizona here?
I mean, they need, as you said, pretty much everything on defense. Like, I think if you draft one of the top receivers and now you have either Harrison, Odunze, Neighbors, Michael Wilson, Trey McBride, remember, a tight end who was a beast once they started feeding him the ball. You still got Rondale Moore, Greg Dortch. Like, you have a pretty good receiving core at that point. So I think you're good there. James Conner in the backfield, Kyler Murray. The offensive line is pretty decent. You need probably a starting guard from somewhere. But outside of that, it's all defense. Like, you've got very little on defense.
I can come away with Chris Abrams-Drain from Missouri. He's projected in the 70s. We can get him at corner. I think we double up at corner if we can.
Okay.
Give me one of those first-rounders that's going to fall.
And they're in a classic situation. People are going to scream, well, they drafted Garrett Williams last year. And they did, but like Garrett Williams coming off the injury that he was coming off in the third round.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of those classic picks where Garrett Williams should not prevent you drafting anybody this year, right? If Garrett Williams recovers from his injury and looks like the player that he potentially could have been before injury, it's a bonus. But you don't say, no, we cannot block the path of Garrett Williams to playing time by drafting somebody that is a better prospect than he is this year. That would be insane.
Who's this person that's saying that you can't draft a corner because they drafted Garrett Williams? You just made somebody up.
Every year.
You're arguing against yourself.
No, every year, people talk about the guys they drafted last year in the mid-rounds as somebody that's going to step forward into playing time and therefore be good. And
they still need two corners.
That's why you can't draft somebody this year.
You still need two. And then again, defensive line-wise, they've got the Barbarian as a pass rusher. They got Zaven Collins, who, they experimented with.
What?
Cameron Thomas didn't necessarily develop what?
What a pass rushing group. You've got the Barbarian and an off the ball linebacker.
Yeah. So that's the other place they could potentially double up with Chop. No, Braylon Trice, I do think could be a really nice fit.
So again, you can't necessarily rely on this, even though he's a second-round pick this time, not a third. But B.J. Ojulari could step forward and be a bigger impact playmaker for them. The great Victor Dimukeje is still there.
Oh, you still love him, yeah.
Love Victor.
They could be in the Darius Robinson spot at 27, Missouri edge defender. Again, I don't know where he tests, if he has one of those Trayvon Walker. Tyree Wilson didn't necessarily test, but the perception was he was that level of athlete. I don't know if Robinson ends up with that type of rise into the top 10 to 15, but he could be that late first potential as well. And he's got that inside-outside ability with Arizona needs both of those things.
Yeah, they do. They need interior guys as well.
Anywhere from a free agency standpoint that you would look. Again, offensively, I think they could use upgrades on the offensive line, but theoretically they're all pretty much locked up as far as DJ Humphries at left tackle, Will Hernandez in the last year of his contract at guard. They could use depth there, but I would probably look to the draft for the line.
They could be a playmaker for one of the big sort of impact defensive linemen in free agency, whichever ones make it to the open market. Like, if Justin Madubuike actually hits the market, that would make sense for Arizona. They've got the money to make it happen. He fills a position of need, and timeline-wise, it makes sense. He's a young player, ascending, coming off a career year. Like, he would be a good addition to them.
They're another team. We mentioned the Browns strategy last year, which involved bringing in Maurice Hurst. I would go, be in that world, Maurice Hurst. You mentioned Javon Kinlaw for another team somewhere as like a buy low candidate to add depth. Shelby Harris, another Browns late signing, just to come in and add depth. I mean, Arizona needs all of that. They need this combination of getting younger and stitching it together with the productive one-year contract types at the end. Marcus Davenport's another guy. If he's officially out there, I would buy low on Marcus Davenport. Any team that needs defensive line help, I would play that game for sure.
Tier Tart is another player that there's some red flags. The Titans basically got rid of him randomly because they were fed up with him. But he was picked up. There were a couple of teams that were claiming him as well. Like, he's still only 26 years old, I think. He could make an impact for a team that's got nobody stopping him getting to playing time.
All right, have we fixed the Cardinals?
Yeah.
There's a lot of options. Because they have so many draft picks, we mentioned more players, I think, for anyone else.
It's a lot of draft picks.
For any other team.
They should be using all of those day 3 picks to either move around or get into next year again. Like, if they can flip those for future picks, they could. That's the kind of draft capital haul that just lets you do a lot of things.
You're right. So listen, the Eagles had like a 3-year run. A 3-year run where they kept having 2 first-round picks, and they just kind of kept it going, right? And it gave them the flexibility to trade for A.J. Brown, with one of them, and then also draft Jordan Davis a couple years ago.
Right.
When you get to that position of power, because teams discount future picks, you can always remain in that position of power. You can always, Arizona has enough picks to pick some players, but also be in a position of power next year. I'm with you as well to continue to play that game.
And if you're one of those teams where you're drafting and you just don't like where you are, we're in the 4th round. Our pick's coming up. We don't like anybody on the board right now, right? We think everybody is at least a round 2,
if they're not a blue or a green on here, I'm trading down.
That's what I mean, right? Like, if you're working any kind of system, right, whether you're using the model or just whatever you've come to, if you're sitting there like in the 4th round, you don't love where your pick is, then try and trade to next year. Like, we'll take even the equivalent 4th round pick next year for, to get out of this pick.